Is that, did that? Okay. Was there any additions or corrections to the minutes in there? Tom does a nice job going through all that, so. If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I move that the minutes be accepted.
Okay, second, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Treasury report she just handed out here.
Yeah, we've had 13 renewals for 2026. A new member, Janice Gatchett. Gatchett, GC Blossberg. Who helped head South Carolina. And then from those dues that came in, we had $30 in donations. And then the cemetery walk, we did have another $10 come in, I think, after the walk. And then somebody would like 3 of the booklet, cemetery booklet, or I don't know. How much they are.
Yeah, okay.
So, and so we didn't have any expenses last 3 months. Positive 411, gives our balance $6,346.17.
By the way, this is the month to get our memberships in. So, and if any of you, I think, does somebody have a record? Do you, Tom, or do you have a record of who's paid, who hasn't?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd know anybody here paid or not, or
Yeah.
that. Okay. So anybody not sure your status, whether it's been paid or not paid, will see our treasurer hereafter. Well, I guess there's any questions on the treasurer's report?
I move that we accept the treasury report.
Okay, second. Whoever, all kinds of hands, so what? Secretary, whoever want to write down about 4. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay. The next item that I was going to mention was.
I just made you describe all happened from.
I know that.
Oh. You know what, it's about this wide box in that car. There's air somewhere I can sit.
One of the things that I was going to mention here was that we haven't, I don't think the last couple or 3 elections maybe even had a formal presentation of the officers or bringing them in. We only had one change, and that was the vice president, which technically Tom's not giving up that much. He still has plenty to do. So Tom Lively, we'd like to express our appreciation for Tom Lively, been vice president for the last 2 years, I guess it was. And then welcome our new one in is Cindy Hedges. So I'm sure everybody has appreciated all of you. The other item that I had was I guess one thing that I wanted to bring up is kind of an old business or whatever. As you well know, Lynn has decided not to do the 2026 cemetery walk. And I guess, is there anyone that would like to volunteer to chair that? Anyone on the committee? Who were the others on the committee? Was you on?
Tony's is in me. So,
Okay. Well, I tried to come to the meetings, but didn't always get there. Well, give that some thought. We don't have to have it just today, but give it some thought. See what your thoughts are. Do you still want to continue on with it, or do we want to have, somebody that would be interested in chairing it? My feeling is, if you look at that, it's a very positive thing for both organizations and the number of people that attend. We usually have a nice turnout and everything, and I know it's a lot of work for everyone that's involved in it, but it's still.
It brings in a lot of people, there's a lot of attention,
Right.
people come to that. And Diane says that we have this year. So we had $200 of sponsor, 44 donations. 244.
That. Oh, wait a minute, take that back. That was just last report. So we had 335 donations or sponsors, and then we had $44 donation. So somebody wants to do that there.
Okay.
370. Yeah, 379.
And as far as I know, it's the only fundraiser the Genealogy Society has.
Yeah, right.
And you can spend some of that money on signs.
Mhm.
Most everything else is.
Right.
Signed for 145 on here.
And he gives us really good deal. That is, he factors in his donation. So part of his reduced bill to us is a donation. So,
Okay.
and we no longer have the brochures printed. The Wells County Public Library does the printing of a trifold for us for free.
And that's a nice little trifle.
It is
Same color.
the Chamber of Commerce makes flyers for us and posters, yeah, and so they don't charge us because we share a membership in society, Chamber.
And you look at that, and I think that's a positive one. Like I say, it is work. But I think it's a little easier for everyone now that we've brought it back to the annex rather than try to go to each cemetery. And as long as people know ahead of time, they can visit visit the cemetery at their own time. So, but I just want everybody to think about that, and hopefully then at least by the next meeting, we'll come to a decision on what we want to do about this. And if somebody thinks they would be willing to chair it, we'll go by that. Go let it, because I'm sure if we decide to go ahead with it, we don't do it by next meeting, we're probably, you need some time to get ready. A lot of the background is studying and, the characters or the people buried there in their life and how they contributed to Wells County. And so a lot of times that takes a little time by several individuals. The other thing, any comments on our newsletter, as they need to do any changes, anything like that? Yeah.
Every word of it. Over and over and over.
I don't think it was my best one since it, like all the others had mistakes in it. I should apologize also not for my mistakes that I discover in each issue after I've got it printed and sent, but I had problems sending the PDF attachment with emails. I usually or always have tried to do a blind copy, so you'd receive a copy, but there's a batch of a bunch of other names, which I just did a copy, and so you see a bunch of other emails, I think, on some of those. And so I apologize for that. And then also apologize for having sent a couple of duplicates because of I'd have batches of emails that I'd send from an alphabetical list of emails. And this time I've tried to create tranches for those who have paid for this year, last year, previous years. And so I didn't have all those included, including the batch for the complimentary copies that the Historical Society members that aren't members of both societies receive. So a lot of you may have received duplicate copies of the PDF. So that's just my senility and problems of trying to do something differently.
Well, we appreciate it. Mark. Any other comments on that? One of the things we're always interested in is our meeting programs and suggestions. That's kind of been left. That's kind of Cindy's place now. And so if any of you have any ideas or anyone or anything you might mention to them, I know we got several available. Tom, he has several. So I don't think it'll be a problem. But maybe there's one of you that something sticks out that's important.
Anybody had help with? Any questions? If you want to hear any more about DNA, just let me know and I will focus the programs to those areas. Thomas did give me a list of names, so got plenty to choose from. But if you have an area of interest that you're wanting to get more information on, let me know and I will see if I can't find somebody that will speak to you.
Is there, let's see, I guess the next thing, Cindy and I kind of worked out some of the agenda here. The deed book, do you have any, where that's at? Do you know, Cindy?
No, not really. Connie's been working on it again, and I do have printouts of the stuff that's been entered and tapes to go along with it that need to be reviewed and added, make any corrections. And Cammie has the computer and she's here today at the meeting. So I don't know where you are.
We've done the read through of BMW. I don't know if there's any other books that have been verified or not. But we'd like to continue with a different set of books. That means we need the microfilm as well. which microfilm should still be stored in the historical museum under the phone there. I have been working, I did book B and book W, finished W this. I am quite willing to continue the machines at my house. It works fine for me, keeps me busy and out of trouble. More out of trouble than this. But anyway, I will take these other two books. We got X and Y, and
As far as I know, the tape says Z, but there's no anything after Y.
okay.
I also have, PQ,
What have you got?
ST,
Was Zoe in the first book? I thought we stopped there. Or was Zoe, does anybody remember? And this is where we stopped.
the last book,
Oh.
the first book ends at O, I think. So we have P and Q or Q and R, I mean, Q and R. Book R is ready to,
I'll take them off your hand.
okay,
I've got them, because I've got the machine.
okay. So I think we've,
At my house.
okay. And S has been entered, but I don't see a report for that.
I can.
Okay.
Yes, Alan.
Just gonna report that anybody that's interested in the full set, when we get the second book done, I just went up, last month or sometime at the museum and purchased one of the first books. And I think there's only 2 copies left. So if anybody's planning on having both books, might be a good idea to buy it now. Get the first one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Or consider printing the first one, yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, I got it. But, you know, some new ones might be interesting, and like Alan said, you've really, you're kind of disadvantaged if you only got half. I mean, I kind of thought that's the problem I've had with the first one, I really need the second one now.
I'm working on it.
Oh. Anything else on that? The other item is we've put this off and everything else. We need to finalize this here constitution and bylaws. And I don't know, Tom, has there been anything done since probably a year ago?
Yeah, a year ago. We have so many on the committee that is interested in revising it. But we haven't had time or had a time where everyone is available. I did have a draft that I had created from the discussion at the November meeting 3 years ago when we approved our current constitution, and within minutes turned around and wanted to set up a committee to revise it. So, but nothing has been done, and at this point, unless someone is really interested in creating a new constitution, I don't see as a priority. But I can send the draft that I had done 2 years. Oh, that's right.
So I remember when we finished the old one and we voted for it, by the time we voted for it, some people were wanting to make changes. So we still want to make changes to it?
It was a change, I don't remember what it was. Some change, some of it was. But I
And also, at least one person wanted to change the meeting date and time.
And I think was the item in there about since we had Zoom meetings, we could include them in voting and everything, which we haven't didn't have in the past since we didn't have the Zoom meeting, so. I guess those are a couple items that I would say we still need to include in them because we're kind of changing our. I think we've had enough interest that we need to continue our Zoom meetings for the people. Just like, what was it? I just heard you talk about a member there, South Carolina or what, that's gonna be one that'll use Zoom if she's interested, or he. So,
And today we have one from Ohio, one from Texas.
great. So we probably need to think about that. Then, then she wrote it down for me. I didn't go through them. She wrote them down. And I hadn't went clear through the newsletter yet. Did you have the days of our meetings?
For this year?
Yeah,
It's always at 10 o'clock, the third Saturday of the odd month.
right. You didn't have in.
No, I didn't.
Well, for instance, the next meeting is March 21st, and that's our carry-in. That's our annual carry-in or whatever. So remember that. That'll be the next meeting, which is March 21st. And hopefully my granddaughter's state dance contest is not that big. And I'll let Cindy know she can run the show if I have to go to the dance contest.
The other meeting we have questions on is always a harbor meeting where it's affected by the street fair.
Yeah,
And the street fair is always the third full week in September, correct?
15 days, and 15 days after Labor Day.
10 days.
That formula never fails.
Okay, so, if Labor Day is the first Monday is the 7th?
Yep.
So 15th,
22nd.
22nd, okay. So,
so we should be okay.
we're the Saturday before street fair.
15.
Unless they change it.
They really don't shut down everything till Monday, right?
Right.
Okay.
They put up the 10 that Saturday.
Calls all the time, you know.
Well, the near. Okay. It'd be great if we don't have to change it. It's always easier to remember. We don't change it, but. Was there any other new business? Did I miss anything, Cindy?
I don't think so, no.
One of the things that I was going to do quick before we have our program here, as you might have noticed in the newsletter here, he had William Bluffton Miller and James Daly there, and Tom had in there as prominent personalities in the county. Well, the Miller family is a part of my family, and I don't know if everybody had a chance, but it's interesting to look up the Find a Grave memorial they had written there for Michael Miller, which was would have been his dad, William Bluffton Miller's dad. And if in his obituary here from the Bluffton Banner of November 29th, 1893, says Michael Miller, the first settler at Bluffton, goes to his rest full of years. He is gathered home like a sheaf fully ripe. Michael Miller was born in York County, Pennsylvania, September 30th, 1809. He immigrated with his parents to Baltimore County, Maryland, and after residing there 4 years, we moved to Fairfield County, Ohio. He returned to Pennsylvania in 1819, where he learned the carpenter's trade. While there, he helped build a bridge across the Big Brandywine of Downingtown. He returned to Lancaster, Ohio in 1832. After remaining there 1 year and in the prime of young manhood and a desire of adventure, he immigrated to the now thriving city of Fort Wayne, Indiana, then only a small village. In 1836, he returned to Ohio, where he was married to Louise Gary and immediately came to Wells County, entering land in Section 36, Union Township, adjoining where the town of Uniondale is now situated. At that time, what is now Wells County was a trackless wilderness abounding with all kinds of game. He built a small cabin or shed with one side open on how you stay warm. With one side open, in which a log heap burned to keep warm. There with his young wife, he commenced life journey, depending on the game and in the immense forest for a living. In 1836, he sold his land and moved to Bluffton and built the old Franklin House, where he kept tavern for 15 years. He served 3 terms as sheriff of the county. His wife died in October 1864, and he was married to Lucy Miller in 1865, who still survives to mourn his loss. His family consisted of 7 children, 4 of whom had preceded him in death, the others being W.B. Miller. And at this time, when this obituary, W.B. Miller of Andrews, Mrs. J.F. Clifton of Hartford City, and Mrs. Henry Fisher of Marion, who were present at the time of the death, which occurred November 25th, 1893. He was 84 years, 1 month, and 25 days. His funeral occurred at the Methodist Church Monday at 11 o'clock. Reverend Wade preached a very able and comforting sermon. Aside from the many relatives present, the audience was composed largely of gray-haired men and women, neighbors who had known and esteemed the deceased for many years. His remains were laid to rest in Fairview Cemetery. I think it's neat, those how they used to write them their obituary and everything. I always, when I go through the old history books, it's got individuals, they're an upstanding citizen, or they, so they really have some real flowery language with those. But I thought that was interesting. And I'm not familiar, I'm sure Alan probably knows where the house was here in town that he built the old Franklin house. Do you have any idea where that's at, Alan?
Market and Johnson,
Market and Johnson.
Be the Morrow Building now.
southwest corner.
It's what?
It'd be the Morrow Building now, but it was a hotel, one of the 3 or 4 hotels through the years.
Okay. Okay. But I thought that was, you read that and he built a 3-sided, open-sided building out. And boy, the winters was like a day like this. I don't know how he survived, but he. Our program, and maybe Tom, do you want to give a little? Matt Day is going to be presenting.
No. Here's Matt Day, one of our illustrious members.
Fancy introduction. So I got a call about 3 weeks ago asking me to do this. My mom died 2 weeks ago, just after I had agreed to do it. We buried her last Friday. I'm not quite as prepared as I thought I would be when I agreed to do this 3 weeks ago, but we'll do the best we can. So I have family history of Native Americans in our family. And the question is, how do you do research on Native Americans? Mom started working on our family history in 1969, my grandmother and her brother were interested in, starting in the days of the Depression, getting some of the Indian money that was distributed to Indians, and they weren't getting any, and they thought that might be a little income when the Depression was going on. So they searched for a long time and never really had any success with that. They knew that there was Native American in the family. Their mother was Native American, but in 1969, Mom was starting her genealogy research. So it was based on my grandmother and her brother and their tries to get some money during the Depression. So 69, Mom had a different world than what we have today. As you may recall, no internet, not a whole lot of connection. So they started going to anything related to Indians in the area. And the main tribe everybody knows about in the area was Miami Indians. So and any brochures about anything related to Indian history, lore, she picked up books upon books to try and start researching. And 69, she drew the family tree of the Shadle side of our family, which is where the Native American history is. John Graves was as far as she could get on the tree, the lowest point, and then the rest of the family was up above. So my grandmother is on this branch. My parents are, I have to look. My dad is here. Mom didn't put any of us kids. But that was as far back as she went. So 3 generations was as far as she could find at that time. In the history of the family, my grandmother had married Fred Day. So his family was oil prospectors that moved into Wells County with the drilling wells. Pretty much most of this information is in the book that I put out and should be on the shelf out here, although we just went out and looked and I didn't see it. But it has our trees, it has the history that we've gathered since then. But so my grandmother's parents, so my great grandparents, are Albert and Minnie Dale. Albert went by Bert, Minnie went by Dale. Looking at Albert, he doesn't look too Native American, but Minnie was Native. And again, the thought was that she probably was part of the Miami Nation. So, searching for years, this is a chart that Mom had put together at 82. So a few years had elapsed. And she had found by 1982 Minnie's connection to Sarah Fuller, who was connected to Mary Godfrey, who was connected to James Godfrey. So by 82, she had that basic information. And the way she got that was she had written to the Miami Nation. They have an archivist, I assume they still do, who compiled and kept records of all of the members of the Miami tribe. The Wee tribe was separate, but somewhat overlapping with the Miami tribe. So they had the record that said our ancestry was the Wee Indian tribe, not the Miamis, but they didn't have details of anything. They just knew that that was the thing. And a big part of the problem came about the original Godfrey, Godboy, it's spelled different ways, obviously, at different times, was a Frenchman. And the French came to America in the early days, and they tended to be a bachelor number one, move into a village with the Indians, and live side by side with the Indians. Jacques Godfrey was the original. He was a there's the prince and there's There's the heir and the spare. Heir and the spare we hear about over in England all the time. He was the spare in French society at the time. So he moved to the Americas, moved into a village north of the Great Lakes with a wee Indian, had a wife up there. He was a fur trader and hunter, so he hunted south at different seasons. So when he was farther south, he had another village with another wife. And then there was a third village with a third wife. So he kind of circulated between his three lives. But the interesting thing is, Jacques had this naming convention. Every wife, the firstborn son was Jacques. The second was Francois. So every one of his wives who had a son had a Jacques, and if they had a second son, it was Francis, making it very confusing to try and follow generations. So Mom had gotten in touch with, 82, she put out what she had in a family cookbook, and come on in, Mr. Reed. Hey, there you go. Thank you. A copy return. In 82, she had put out a cookbook of family recipes and family history that she knew at the time. We had not gone very far back in history at that point. So from our knowledge that we've gained, Minnie was just a quarter wheat. Her mother, Sarah, was half wheat, and her grandmother was Mary. Don't ask me the middle name because it's this long. Godfrey. And Mary was full, so each of her children were subsequently less. Then her parents, which we don't have a picture of, her father was James, went by Jocko, Tall Oak, and Indian lady named Nancy went by Morningstar. He is the signer of a treaty in 1824 with, before the 1830 Indian removal, he signed for the Wee tribe to move to Kansas. So he and the Wee tribe moved out west to Kansas. He didn't like living on the reservation out in Kansas, and he had some money, so he moved back and bought land and lived in Wells County again. So that's how he happened to be here with his daughter then, living here with him, and met the Shadles when they moved over from Ohio. And interesting on the obituary that you were reading. So my ancestors, Philip Shadle, moved, he sold his little farm he had in Ohio and moved to 100 acres of farmland in Indiana. Forested land in Indiana, started cutting down trees, building a cabin. He had done carpentry work his whole life. He did that when he was 65. A year later, his son with his pregnant wife moved over and moved in with mom and dad for a little while he built his cabin. So if you look at the plat maps from the early days of Indiana and early in Wells County history, that whole southern part of Wells County is filthy with Shadles. And some of them are, we know the relations, and some of them we aren't sure about the relations, but that there was a marriage between Jocko's daughter and the white settler in the region. So that's how we ended up with we Indians back in this area, but they lost any claims to any treaty money or anything else. And there are, at the time, there were like 30 recognized tribes that were actually getting money from treaties. By today's standards, there are 540-ish recognized tribes in the U.S., but the country as a whole never had recognition of any of those tribes and track of it. That all has made it difficult to track any genealogy. Jocko was living amongst the whites in Indiana. But Indians, natives were kind of looked down upon. And when he died, even though he had family that were buried because of his connections to white in the Snow Cemetery in the southern part of Wells County, he was Indian. He wasn't allowed to be buried there. So he's buried on farm ground and unmarked grave. One of these days I'm going to get out there. I haven't done it yet. But he wasn't allowed to be buried in the white cemetery. Times change, our standards change, and our views of different people change. Unfortunately, there wasn't the same documentation because the U.S. as a whole wasn't valuing the Indians. So if you don't value somebody, why would you track them? So there's a term that I've read many times, papercide. So it's there may have been some genocide. There was genocide with the Trail of Tears, etc., but there also was a papercide. So the records of the Indians were very poorly kept by anybody, U.S. government or local area governments. So the best approach that we had was Mom got a hold of Miami's, and through the Miami's got a hold of a lady who was working on the families' histories of the Wheat tribe. So this little book, which the library does have out there now also, is her research and has every name related to the Indian nation of the Wheat peoples. So searching through, Mom worked with this lady while she was writing the book. Her name, our names are all in here as well, with the connections, because she was doing family histories of everybody that she could. And trying to get Louise recognized again as a tribe, which they're there finally, but doesn't help them financially, but they're recognized as having been a tribe. Genealogy research on the Indians, you really have to go back through and figure out where your history is, the ancestor is from, or what kind of area of the country you think they were from, to find out what tribes were living there. With 500 some tribes as potentials, it's not easy to get that information, but you've got to do a lot of searching. There are maps out there that give you some ideas. Indians didn't own land, so they tended to be more mobile than what we are. But all those things fed into creating difficulties with tracking that information down. The book that I have on my grandmother has the family histories of our various ancestors, has the fan chart up front, which is a fold out, and is color coded on the family trees of each individual family generation going back. So I've got a fan chart that gives you my grandmother as the start and center, and then each generation going back is got a color. And then as you go through each generation, each is color coded with the color up here matches the colors on the fan chart. Try and keep track of which layer of that shell you're looking at any one time. But has the family history part of it up front. But then when my grandmother was getting older and in her 80s, my mom was involved in doing all of this, and my grandmother liked to tell her stories of her life. Mom said, why don't I send you a tape recorder and you can record the family stories that you remember, and I'll put them in one of my books. So Mom sent her tape recorder, and a few weeks later, Mom got a tape back and started transcribing it. I don't know how long happened between her transcription starting and a phone call with my grandmother saying, you know, I wrote all this stuff out so that I wouldn't make mistakes when I was recording it. Did I send those to you? Do you want them, or should I just throw them away? Or is it much easier to or to type off of a written note than it is to transcribe if anybody's tried to do that? So, Mom jumped up and down at the idea of getting a hard copy instead of the audio transcription. And that was in the 80s. We did one hack at this book years ago, 25 or so years ago. And finally got this put together with a more complete story of Grandma's life and that whole family history as we know it today. In 2020, I think it was, that we finally put this out. So it does have all the family trees. It does have the Day family, which my dad's dad was one of 15 children, the youngest of 15 children. Philip Shadle side was Philip, and then Philip, his son. There was a generation there with 15 children too, which is part of why there's a lot of Shadles. And it is a pretty complete story and history. It tells her stories from her growing up, and then also tried to merge in some context of what the world was like, because the world today is different than the world when I grew up, which is different than the world when my grandmother was growing up or my father was growing up. Or so to understand your frame of reference is always kind of today's world, and yeah, you know what happened in your lifetime. But going back in the generations before, I don't have a lot of understanding about what Dad had to do with the Korean War, and certainly no understanding of what his grandparents or great grandparents did. In the book also is my grandmother and her husband, Fred Day, went west, followed the oil search, and 10 years after they'd been married, still hadn't had a baby, finally got pregnant and had a little baby boy. It was a blue boy, blue baby, heart defect. And at that time, you couldn't do anything about it. It was about a year later, they came up with a surgical procedure to close that hole in the heart. But it was too late for that baby. Grandma was distraught. Fred was distraught. They decided to adopt a boy. And that was in the 30s. That was at a time when if you were a pregnant girl, not married, you got loaded onto a train and shipped out to Kansas City, Missouri. There was a bunch of orphanages there that would take in pregnant girls and house them until they had their baby, ship them back on the train back home, and put the babies up for adoption. So Fred drove over and picked up a replacement baby. She was my dad. So genetically, there's no connection. But the Wee tribe recognizes him as son of Wee Indian. So as a result, history as well.
He's getting softer.
I'm sorry, I should be talking louder. My voice is. I didn't hear the train. I have the door shut. Sorry about that. I'll try and speak up. Thank you. Any questions? Anything anybody wants to know? Or
Was Charlie Day any relation?
there is a Charlie Day in our family.
Teacher?
No. That there were two. I think they're both Charles E. Days in Wells County from two different Day families. We've never found a relationship. There may be a connection, I don't know. That there is a family history of an awful lot of names repeating. Philip had Philip. Jacques had Jacques, had Jacques, had Jacques. I think there's like 6 generations of Jacques or James. So, but we've never found the teacher Charlie Day's connection, although it has been looked at from both sides.
History teacher at Officer.
Mhm. Mhm. And he's he's on a plaque on the wall in Lancaster, because I think he was also on the board and at the time.
How did you finally track down where the person in the unmarked grave was buried?
That's been known for quite a while, and it is listed that way on Find a Grave.
Really?
So you can find it on Find a Grave. Native Americans were not necessarily recognized in cemeteries in the early times. So as a result, a lot of information on who's where is lost. But the family had kept track of where that grave was for a long time. It is an unmarked grave at this point, apparently. So no stone there. It's east of Rifesburg, like a mile east on farmland. That old Woodford is how it's always described. So you have to go back somebody's private drive just a little bit to get to where the cemetery is. Someday I'll get there. Haven't done it yet. Any other questions?
I'm a friend of Priscilla. Well, yeah, they're married.
I hate
My
it.
memory.
I blame brain damage
Anyway.
because I have that excuse.
Jack
taken
Fuller
on.
was,
Shadle?
No.
He's asking.
No.
Fuller, okay.
Jack Fuller. He was.
His
policeman.
policeman.
Yeah.
Didn't-
He lived at the end of South, East South Street.
I was, wonder if that was the Fuller.
Probably. Can I get back there? So John, John Fuller was the one that married, so John and Mary had several children. I should be able to remember these things. I'm gonna use my brain damage excuse. And say it's the brain damage. That side. Mini John, Graves, John Fuller. There we go. So John Fuller. Oh. Not showing up. So that. Been kicked out of the presentation. Then can I get that up? No. With an extended desktop, not a mirror. Let me go to mirror right now. Okay, so maybe that won't work here. Let's do this. I'm gonna cheat. Don't tell anybody. So this is gonna work. If you see somebody that looks promising.
The point four.
One gives it sever. We learned.
Yeah, I don't know what her father's name was, so.
You think it was, what was his name?
Jack.
Jack.
Policeman there in town.
Let's see if I can find the Jack Fuller. Yes.
His daughter was telling me that.
James Brown.
He
I
would have been one.
don't have a Jack at this point in my list. But if he was born in the 20s,
Yeah.
they have that's one of those branches that now, and I haven't necessarily gone down every generation, but we've done a lot of that. That's not, you're welcome to. Yeah.
Unmarked grave, or is not allowed to put a marker on it?
It's on private property, so I suppose could be too, but you'd have to have the,
For all.
you know, I've wondered those same kind of things, so it's not an ignorant question at all, but I haven't researched it either, so I really don't know.
The cemeteries of Native Americans, when they are like maybe from one local tribe, they are buried at one site, and they are unmarked. And if you know where they are, they're gonna have to kill you, because Native Americans were buried with their finest, their beads, their headdresses, their everything was buried with them, and it's people want those things. And even though they're all private property, they go in, because mainly that, they know where they are, the graves, and for that area remains unmoved. Yeah, now over Peru at the cemetery there, it is mostly Godfroys that are in there. There is a Francois that I say that the Peru, but I don't know which one. The one that had the treaty house in
There's a whole Godfrey reserve now in Blackford County. The Godfreys were very
they were
prominent
prominent
name
people, they
around
were,
here.
yeah,
And
president,
that they're scattered all over. But I would be curious because when Jaco moved back here, he pretty much dropped the pretenses of being Native American in order to fit in with society at the time. Even the picture of Mary, she's in English attire. There was a time when it was so frowned upon to be native that the native people that did either stay in the area and or came back really tried to assimilate, speak English, fit in with the communities as much as possible. And so I don't know what anybody would say about whether or not you could put a marker on there as far as identifying it as Rocco's gravesite. Which ones? These? Oh, the Godfrey. Which one? This one? This one, the library has a copy. That's my book that we put out. This one is one that Brenda Hafner put together. It's as complete as she could get on the family history. And there is one in the library up here as well. You come on, take it. You're welcome.
Not taking the book out, just.
I didn't take some, but he just returned it. We won't say who. He's had it for a year, apparently.
So there was such a stigma against the Native Americans at one time that the house that I grew up in, when it was built by a man who bought lumber. He would go out and buy standing lumber, and he would be gone for many weeks at a time. And so when he built the house, he married a Native American, which was just practically unheard of. So he built hiding places in the house so that if she was threatened, she could have places to go.
Been stigmas against certain groups of people as long as there has been time.
Still are.
And there still are. Still doesn't make any sense. It's not understandable in all reality. People just want to live their lives, and don't understand some of those things, but hey, they're still up. Anything else?
Thank you so much. Okay.
Hey, Marty, it's back to you.
And if you're interested in more, reading more about Native American, there's one shelf here in the Indiana room. And over on this side, there's 4 shelves of Native American books. Research.
Okay, thank again for Matt coming today, and that's a new angle to genealogy that I have never heard about, looking into the native Indian there. Are there any other items of business today?
Joanne just asked, the next meeting will be down in the, come into the building. Ask that you will march and then carry in the luncheon. Yeah.
Okay, did you all hear Cindy? Our next meeting on March 21st is carry-in. It'll be downstairs there, right there in the corner where we come in. Okay, so,
She'll have a notice in the next meeting.
okay. And I would hope that the weather would be a little nicer by then. But,
Well, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
okay. Second? Okay, Joanne back there, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thanks again.
Well, I'll close the Zoom, and I hope you enjoyed it and could hear and maybe see. I'll post this probably by the end of this month. And if the screen isn't visible, I'll see if I can get his slides and post those online also. So thank you for attending.
I didn't